So, dear Thai and dear Sangha, this morning the Vietnamese translation is in the Buddha Hall because we're too many to fit everyone in here. And this autumn, this is our second week, and we have so many people here this autumn, as we had also during the summer, and spring, and winter. And I'm just wondering why you're here. Why did you come to a place like this? We're just humble nuns and monks here. What are you looking for? And sometimes I look at my brother, look at a brother or a sister, and I wonder, why have they chosen this place, for their life? Why they have chosen this path, this lifestyle? Brothers and sisters who are coming, from the other side of the globe. And what are you doing here? Why are you here? Why are you here? Why have you chosen, this place as your family, as your home? And sometimes when I have issues with someone, I think, wow, this person is coming from, it's like appearing from nowhere. And it's impacting my life so much. Enriching my life, yes, but also, triggering my other seeds too. Right? Bringing up the worst in me as well. And I ask, why? Why have you come here and just, become so much a part of my life? Did that ring any bells to anyone? Does that answer any concerns and questions that you may have? And so when we come here, we have our daily concerns. Our concern for a living. We want to make sure that we have, a good job to make enough to survive. We have concern for our health. We have a concern for our, happiness in the family. Concern for success, I suppose, for those of you out there in the world. But then when we're here, we have to go beyond these concerns and tap into a much deeper concern. We call it the ultimate concerns. Do you have any ultimate concerns? What's your ultimate concern? And the ultimate concerns comes about when we ask questions like, who am I? What am I doing here on the face of the planet? What's my purpose in life? can I truly be happy? Can I be truly free? And I'm sure some of you had come to Plum Village with that ultimate concern. You have these questions and you want to find the answers to these questions. And when you are able to ask these questions, when you are able to have these ultimate concerns, then you begin to have a heart path, path of the heart. What's your heart path, brother? What's your heart path? And so this is really an invitation for us to look at our volition, what it is that we want to do with our life, what's our aspiration in life. When we have an aspiration for our life, like a healthy volition, then we can be happy. Then we can let go of all the insignificant things that unfold in our life. And volition is a kind of food. It's one of the 4 nutriments. And volition helps us to have a purpose, energy, enthusiasm to live our life and to continue to live our life. And for me, a healthy volition always includes other people in it. It's not just for our well-being, but it's also supporting, helping, serving other people as well. And I see that living in the community, living day in, day out with my sisters, with the structure of a schedule, I know exactly what I need to do within a day. Or now and then I would go out and lead retreats, or, we have retreat here. And for me, that's a path. It's a path that's been created by, Thai's vision and also by the community. And I know in this path, I'm supported. I'm supported by my brothers and sisters. I'm supported by the practice. I'm supported by everyone. But I always ask myself, this is my external path, but what exactly what my heart path? In this path, can I find a heart path? Of course, my heart path is not separate from this external path. This heart path comes, or I can see clearly my heart path when I'm able to really embrace the practice and the teachings wholeheartedly, so that it can help me to respond to these ultimate concerns that I have. And I've been thinking of, now that Thai is not teaching anymore, I've been listening to Thai's teaching every day, And I'm just so grateful because Thai has such clarity, in the teachings that he's offering us, and also really new way of looking, at the teachings, new practices, new vision, and it's so inspiring. I'm just so grateful to have, like a teacher like Thai. And I know all my sisters and brothers have received the best, the best teaching from the best teacher. And now that we're stepping up, I can see sometimes they get really bored listening to us. I see sometimes they don't even come to the Dharma talk. And I wonder, what is it that's nourishing them now? Nourishing their heart path? What is it that they're here for now? Now that they don't receive that kind of nutriments, from the best teacher, like Thai. And that made me have to look again at my beginner's mind. Because with that kind of mind, it shows that my beginner's mind has eroded. And that I need to re-examine my beginner's mind. A beginner's mind is like first love, when you're experiencing things for the first time, experiencing the community, experiencing the practice for the first time, and you have so much enthusiasm and so much, joy and energy in learning, in just receiving everything. It's like your mind is so open to receive and to learn. And so I made it my practice that every time, I interact with a lay friend, that I'm going to tap into her beginner's mind and really make it my own mind. Because you guys are coming for the first time or second time, and you're fresh. You have strong beginner's mind. We're here like 10 years, 20 years, and we sort of become desensitized, to all the, all the good conditions that we have here. We take them for granted. And so we lose our beginner's mind. And so your presence here is helping me to tap into my beginner's mind, so that I can see with your eyes. I can see everything as if I'm looking at it for the first time, so that everything becomes really precious. Even the most ordinary things becomes precious and beautiful. So that has been my practice, and that has been, your presence had been a tremendous support in helping me to keep my beginner's mind alive. And so this is a reminder for my brothers and sisters to always keep your beginner's mind alive, because it's a precious mind. It's a mind that can help you to go far on your spiritual path. It can help you to go to the end of your life, as a practitioner, as a monastic. when the beginner's mind is there, then we can be happy over simple, ordinary things. And so the question, what are you doing here? You know, for our lay friends, but also for the monastics. I ask this question to myself all the time. What am I doing here? So that I don't become desensitized and take things for granted. And again and again, we're learning to wake up these jewels that we have inside ourselves. And these three precious jewels that we have inside, it's really the energy of mindfulness, concentration, and insight. I think 84,000 different Dharma doors that we have in Buddhism, it's all about cultivating mindfulness, concentration, and insight. And one time, the sisters in the New Hamlet sat together, and we decided that we're going to see how many Dharma doors do we have. Do we actually have 84,000 different Dharma doors? And so we sort of like brainstorm the all potential Dharma doors, the big and the small, the new and the old. And we could only come up with like 600 something. And so I don't know where the other 80,000 Dharma doors. And I think, and Thai has said it, the 84,000, it's just to say that there's just limitless ways to practice. As long as these practices help us to cultivate the energy of mindfulness, concentration, and insight. And so mindfulness, as you know, it's energy of being present, of being aware of what's going on in our body, in our mind, in the surrounding. It takes kind of presence to be able to recognize what's there. Mind and a body together so we can actually see what's happening, see and sense and feel what's happening in the present moment. And when we stay with what's happening, when we are present, we stay long enough, and we're concentrated on that particular, issues that we're looking into. And when we stay long enough, then we see very deeply, into it, the causes and conditions that had brought about the issues. And that's insight, understanding. And but how do we cultivate these energies? Where do we get these energies? They're so precious. These are the energies that made, a Buddha a Buddha. These are the energies that help us to wake up, to become enlightened, to be like a Buddha. Where do we start? There's just 84,000 different Dharma doors. Where do I start? So I want to talk about the four domains of mindfulness, the four establishments of mindfulness, because I feel these are practices that are so simple. I guess in the simplicity you can find, the depths and the truth and the beauty of the teachings. In the simplicity, in the most ordinary, you can find the treasures. We tend to think that we have to go to the other side to look for it, or to go out there. That has to be something, magical that could help us tap into these treasures. But in the most simple practices, that if we make use of them, that we can find the treasures in ourselves. And what's really beautiful about mindfulness and concentration and insight, these energies, they're just within us. That we don't really need to go anywhere to look for it. And I've been hearing from my brothers and sisters, from whenever they come up here, that they wanted, to offer the teachings, like the deep teachings, the teachings on non-self, the teachings on nirvana, the teachings of no birth, no death, because they feel they need to offer these teachings so that, our brothers and sisters would not get bored. Because like I said, they get bored listening to us. So one sister said, we need to make one step up with our teachings so that, it can stimulate our brothers and sisters to come to the Dharma talks. And these deep teachings has its value. And Thai had offered so much of these deep teachings. And this is to encourage our non-Vietnamese brothers and sisters to learn Vietnamese, because there's just so much of these really deep teachings that Thai had offered, and they're all in Vietnamese. Maybe 5% is in English, but 95% is in Vietnamese. So I really encourage you to learn Vietnamese so that you can receive these wonderful teachings of Thai. But listening to the talk by Thai, like these teachings, they're not really our insight. They're Thai's insight and experiences, but they help. They sort of give us a direction. This is where we need to go. It's really the ordinary and the simple practices in our daily life that help us to have to experience this insight, these deep teachings that Thai had offered. So don't look for something very deep. It could be, right here. It's not very far. And it all begins with our body. Isn't that simple? And the Buddha said, there's a most beautiful way to have living beings realize purification, overcome directly grief and sorrow. end pain and anxiety, travel the right path and realize Nirvana. So this is like a teachings that help us, to transform our suffering, to experience happiness and joy in here and now, and to end all our suffering. Isn't that great? To end all our suffering and to realize the highest awakening, the highest liberation, Nirvana. So this sounds really simple, the 4 establishments of mindfulness. My brothers and sisters heard this all the time. They probably read this almost every week. And we tend to take it for granted. But this is the way. This is the way to freedom and to happiness. To whatever that is you're looking for, that you hear. Whether it's peace, whether it's to help you to work through a difficulty that you have, or whether just to give you enough clarity to see what it is that you want to do with your life. To find that inner path, that heart path. And it starts with the breath. So there are 4 establishments. One is the body, the feeling, the mind and objects of mind. The mind and objects of mind, that means everything. That means that all the 84,000 different Dharma doors could be found in this sutra, this simple sutra. Because what is mind and objects of mind? That's the whole cosmos, right? The whole cosmos is really the object of our mind. So it's a wide scope. So the Buddha begins within the domain of the body. There are so many different things that we can do to cultivate mindfulness. One is the breath. And we learn to recognize the breath as it is, without controlling it or manipulating it, just simply acknowledging the breath. And the breath has this power of just ending all thinking, which means ending suffering. Because I found in myself, the suffering that I experience are mostly coming from my thinking. My perceptions about things, about my brothers and sisters, about myself. We have a perception about ourselves. The other day I was talking to my sisters about, the inferiority complex. That, that we think we're not good enough, we're not beautiful enough, we're not worthy enough. And that's a wrong perception. And this wrong perception had been, reinforced and watered through, by the society, by our upbringing, even by our parents too. And so it's a wrong perception, and that it creates so much pain and suffering. So our perception, our ideas about this and that, our thinking, sort of ceaseless thinking, like a beehives in the back of our head that's like all the time. They're like the main cause of our suffering. And if the moment we're able to come back to our breath, all those stops, this thinking and perception just ceases. And question for my brothers and sisters. So if we learn about the breath and how important it is, to use this Dharma door, how often do you practice breathing? Do you take refuge in your breath? I think taking refuge in our breath is taking refuge in the Buddha, in the Dharma, and in the Sangha. And I notice with myself, that my mind is quite tricky. I think I'm with my breath, but in that little corner of my mind, I'm thinking about something else. Does that happen to you? Yeah, my brothers are nodding. And so we're not really taking refuge 100% on our breath. It's like maybe a little bit part of us thinks that we're like breathing, but we're not. And so if we can just take up this practice of breathing, this conscious breathing, just noticing the breath as it is, noticing it as it comes in from the beginning, as it comes out, from the beginning to the end. I think that's enough for us to wake up, to become enlightened. But, our brain doesn't work that way. We take things, we just take things on automatic piloting so quickly that we need other reminders, and we need other practices to stimulate our brain, stimulate our mind. So the Buddha offered another things that we can use that's in the domain of the body, which is the awareness of the movement of the body, the different posture and position, and just simply bring the awareness to, oh, this is what I'm doing. I'm just bringing up my hand like this. This is how I place in my feet. Sort of like making a commentation of whatever we're doing. Do you know how you watch a football game and there's like this commentator that just make comments about everything? Do you know where the ball's going and how the person is kicking the ball? We sort of do that to ourselves so that we can be present and be aware of how we carry our body, of the position that we're sitting, of the posture that we're in, of the movement of the body. Because we're bringing, the energy down to our body so that it's not in our mind all the time. Our brain weighs, 2% of the body mass, but it consumes more than 25% of our energy. And you know that when you think, you feel like you're burning in your brain, and yet you couldn't stop. So we need to bring that energy into the body. And when we bring that energy down and acknowledge and recognize and notice every movement that we make, every position that we're in, every posture that we are sitting, or that we're in, can help to bring that energy down so that we can be present in the body without having it in our head. Because if we invest too much energy in our head, it can get carried away so easily. So that sounds so simple, right? Every one of us can do, right? And you don't have to come to the monastery to do this. You can do this at home, anywhere. And then the different parts of the body, becoming aware of the different parts of the body. This is when we are contemplating on the different parts of the body, different organs in the body. Sort of like having a review of the body, a body scan, going through our whole body so that our mind is focused, It's focused in the body and not, in our thinking, not investing it in the thinking. And you think that you have to You think that you have to have like really, like these deep practices to be able to experience peace and awakening. You don't. All you need is the body, and the body is there. The breath is part of the body. The different elements of the body, the different elements that constitute the body, the body, the earth, the air, the heat element or the fire element, and the water element. And I just love the practice of reflecting on the elements so much, because what I notice is when I'm contemplating on the elements is that I see the elements inside here is not separate from the element outside of me. That I'm just merely an extension of the element outside. This body that I think is so separate from everyone and everything is actually a part of, the elements outside. The air that I'm breathing in, without this air that I'm taking in, I wouldn't be able to be here. And the warmth that I need, and the food that I eat is coming from the earth and the rain. And so it's a practice of contemplation that helps us to come in touch with the deep insight of interbeing and non-self. To see how we're so connected to everything, to everyone, to the earth. And then also in this sutra, the Buddha had mentioned the 9 stages of the disintegration of the body, the deterioration of a dying body, so that we can see that our body is like that eventually. Because there's such identification of ourselves with the body, such attachment to the body, and that this contemplation helps us to sort of loosen up that clinginess to the body, and that identification with the body, to see that we're more than just the body. I'm just go over really quickly because you can find the sutra in the chanting book, Chanting from the Heart, and that it could be, like the key teachings that we can use in our daily life to help us to cultivate mindfulness, concentration, and insight. And then the Buddha talked about the feelings. Just simply recognizing that there's a pleasant feeling or an unpleasant feeling or a neutral feeling. And I noticed that the Buddha always talk about just these 3 feelings, like whether it's pleasant or unpleasant or neutral. I haven't read anywhere that the Buddha talked about how to deal with anger and how to deal with, like strong emotions. And Thai is really good at talking about, how to work with strong emotions and how to work without anger. And it's a practice that we all have to. Strong feelings, strong emotions are things that we need to confront all the time. At least I am. I just have to deal with it all the time. And what I notice is that these emotions that I have, it's a mental energy, right? But it always manifests on my body. And I can actually feel it in my body. I can actually localize that emotion or that feeling that's raging inside on my body. And for me, it's usually on my belly. And so, go to the part in your body that feels constricted and tight, wherever it is. You know, when you have an anger, or even a sadness, or whatever emotions and feeling that you may have, try to see it on the body. Try to see where it is. Try to localize it. It could be, you know, a place where it feels tight or tense. And breathe into that place. For me, it's usually like a block at my belly. Does anyone ever have that, or it's just me? Like I feel like this block that's there. And then breathe with it and just noticing it without beating myself down, without judging myself. Just simply acknowledge that there's this block there and it feels really uncomfortable. And at points it could feel really overwhelming as well. And so acknowledging it and breathing with it, it's as if it's like my baby. It's actually a wounded child. The suffering that's there. They're really a wounded child. The suffering that I have after I became a nun, I realized that most of the suffering that I have had come from my adolescent years and my early childhood. And I mean, it's not anything significant, but it had left, you know, the wounds in me. And when I sit with it, I notice that it loses its charge, this emotion or this energy. And then it lessens its intensity. It sort of like melt away right in front of my eyes, so that I can see deeply into it. I can see the causes and conditions, you know, for this suffering. And it's only when I'm able to see and understand that I can be free from it. And the breathing helps us to anchor ourselves, you know, in the present moment, with the energy of mindfulness, for us to go deep inside ourselves, to places that feels really uncomfortable, to these dark places inside, so that it can help to bring clarity and light, you know, to that dark places inside ourselves. And it's only when we are able to see that we can heal ourselves and transform the suffering, transform the wounded child in us. And then the third domain, the mind. And I just love this because, listen to this. So the Buddha had taught, when her mind is desiring, the practitioner is aware, my mind is desiring. When her mind is not desiring, she's aware, my mind is not desiring. She's aware in the same way concerning a hating mind, a confused mind, a collective mind, a dispersed mind, an expansive mind, a narrow mind, the highest mind, and a concentrated and liberated mind. I mean, just simply acknowledging that this is happening, that I don't need to beat myself down for what I'm feeling, what I'm experiencing in my mind. Most of the time we beat ourselves down, and that we have all this judgment for ourselves. We're not good enough. We're not a good practitioner. We're a slacking practitioner. Or we're bad nun. But the Buddha says that you don't need to add the second arrow to the suffering that you already have. The second arrows are really ideas and judgments that we have, for what we are going through right now. But just simply acknowledging that, yes, there is this desiring mind. I'm aware it's there. And that I'm present for it, to embrace it. Because I want to understand and I want to transform it. I want to understand, why is it like this? Why am I feeling the way I do? Why am I not concentrated? Why am I not free? I want to understand. And so this simple awareness, this simple recognition is all we need. We don't need to add anything to it. We don't need to associate, any experiences we had in the past with it, or to compare with it with anyone's experiences, but just simply acknowledging it. And then the objects of mind. The Buddha had mentioned a couple different objects of mind. In the sutra, the Buddha mentioned the 5 hindrances, the 5 obstacles that prevent us to really experience peace and happiness and freedom. And that we practice it as we practice with observation of the mind, just simply acknowledging that there is sensual desire in us, that there is anger in us, and that it's there, or if it's not there, or if we have transformed it, that we just simply acknowledge that. Or drowsiness. I'm big time when it comes to sleeping in sitting meditation. And for years I struggled with it. This dullness and drowsiness is one of the 5 hindrances. And I still have not transformed it, honestly. But what I really appreciate is that nobody judged me for it. Sometimes my sister sitting next to me, they would poke me on my leg to wake me up. But no one in the community would say, "You're an older sister and you fall asleep all the time in sitting meditation." I really appreciate my sisters for that. And I just keep going to sit in anyways. Even if I know I'm going there, I'm going to fall asleep. And there are days, not all the time, there are days when when I'm not tired and I'm not falling asleep, then, it's like really peaceful sitting and I have such clarity in my mind. And I know if I keep going, maybe one day I'll transform this drowsiness. And I'll get to that place of clarity and peacefulness that I had tasted and experienced in my sitting. And so if you are experiencing difficulties in your practice, whatever it is, don't be despaired. Keep going. Continue with what you're doing, because it's one of those obstacles that will eventually go away, right? And it's actually, and I'm just sharing this, but actually I feel so nourished just by going in there with my sisters. And sometimes I think, wow, we're kind of weird here. We're like coming together and sit quietly and look inside. Is that weird? I mean, how many people actually do this? Just go in there, like with the whole community, and we're just turning our back away from, the other people and just looking inside for half an hour. And you're here to do that with us? That's weird. And that's why I asked, what are you doing here? This is how we do. We go in there and we sit and we look inside with our eyes closed. I actually feel really empowered by the fact that we're all here together, and we're here to build ourselves. We're here to go beyond these daily concerns that we have, so that we can really, have quality time for ourselves, to go beyond these, these ordinary needs and concern, so that we can tap into a much deeper needs and deeper concerns. And so I never miss sitting meditation, even if I go in there and I feel really drowsy. And so the Buddha is just helping us to recognize it. He's teaching us to recognize, these hindrances without really judging ourselves and beating ourselves down. Because when we beat ourselves down or when we judge ourselves, I think we can give up the path so easily. And then the Buddha talked about the 5 aggregates, the 5 different parts that made of our human being. The form, feelings, perceptions, the mental formations, and the consciousness. And I'm thinking of the 84 different thousand Dharma doors. That's been in my mind all the time. The 84,000 different Dharma doors. How can I create more Dharma doors for myself? Like to work with these 5 aggregates, to confront these 5 aggregates, and to understand the 5 aggregates. Because it's like our total being is in these 5 aggregates. The form I'm familiar with, my body I'm familiar with. This is the practicing to be aware of the body is really, my number 1 practice. And but my consciousness and my perceptions are something that I found so elusive. And especially perception. Like I have an idea about things, about myself and about And for me, that's reality. I mean, it's so much a part of me. If I knew it's a perception, then it no longer, then that it's no longer in issues for me. I don't think it's a perception. I have a perception about you, and I don't think that's a perception. That's my reality of you. See, that's the danger of having, like these perceptions and belief systems that we have. Is that it's our reality. And once we know it's a perception, and that 90% of our perceptions are wrong, then we can really put it down so easily. But that's the thing, is that we don't really see it as perception, or we don't see that our perception is 90% wrong. I see 95 of my perceptions are right. That's the problem with me. And my sisters are like putting up these mirrors for me to look at myself. Like, hey sister, look at your perception. They're wrong. And I believe a lot of us think that that 90% of our perceptions are right. And that the Buddha is wrong when he says that 90% of our perceptions are wrong. Right? And so this is a really challenging area for me to work with, my own perception, and to be able to really see that it's a perception, that it's a limited view of looking at the world and at myself and at other people, and that it challenges me to really keep my heart open and my eyes open to see much more, to see beyond what I think the reality is. And these perceptions are like tinted glasses. They're like tinted glasses that we put on, and we see the world through these tinted glasses. And if we can only put that down, that tinted glasses, I think we would have much clarity, and that we would see things for what it is, and that we would see the most sacred in the most simplest things there is, the most beautiful in the most ordinary. So I'd like to invite you to look for this sutra and read it on your own, because it's a really simple and really precious sutra that offers so many different ways to practice, to cultivate mindfulness and concentration and insight. When I first discovered this sutra, I was reading a sutra, a novel, a short story that was written by Thai. And I was just a lay friend here, and in the back of that book was this discourse. And I read it and I thought, wow. I mean, I was so, like it was like an eye-opening experience for me to experience such simple teachings. And I thought, Thai must have written this. It was so poetic, it was so beautiful. It was like, like the stories that he had written. And later on, I found that it was really not Thai who had written it. It was the Buddha who had taught this sutra. And wow, that was a really powerful experience for me, and it had become, like my key practice. And that I read this every now and then, every Monday, that I would take this out and read this discourse so that I would remember to practice them. And so, such simple things, simple practices, but it can help us to really wake up. And when we are awakened, when we are mindful, when we are peaceful, it's not just for ourselves. It's for our Sangha, it's for our family, it's for our society. It's actually for the whole humanity. So an awakening of one person, I'm not talking about like awakening in a sense of, what the Buddha had experienced under the fruit of the Bodhi tree. I'm just talking about being mindful, being present for ourselves, being present here now. That kind of awakening. That our awakening is actually contributing to the collective awakening of humanity. And I just love it to see how, our awakening, this energy that we generate together here in Plum Village, from each individual's practices, each individual's energy of peace and clarity and love, when we come together, it can be really powerful. Like we experienced that during the formal lunch, right? When the energy of mindfulness is so strong. I mean, I feel like when I'm there in the presence of the Sangha like that I don't have to make any effort, and then I can be really mindful, of the food, of my body, of my thoughts, my feeling, and of the surrounding. And that we're creating this light together, and that this light sort of like ripples out, and it affects everyone that come in touch with that light. And I think maybe once upon a time, we've been struck by that light. We were struck by the light of mindfulness, of peace, that had been generated by these awakened people, awakened beings, by the community here. And that's why we have woke up and we're here. So you're here, maybe you were just drawn to that light. And one of them, we still have, can I have another 15 minutes to share this really intriguing studies that I've read. And it's the work of I don't know if you're familiar with David Hawkins. Not Stephen Hawkins, it's David Hawkins. And he worked on consciousness. He's trying to calibrate, the different level of consciousness. And what's really intriguing for me about these studies is that, he uses muscle testing, to calibrate the consciousness of everything you could have imagined. Anyone, just through muscle testing, that they can actually calibrate your level of consciousness, how awakened you are. And but what's really intriguing for me is that in this whole spectrum of different level of consciousness, from 0 to 1,000, 200 is the critical mass, where under the 200 are characterized by people who are, I think we consider having a lot of negativities, negative seeds. Their negative seeds are really predominant and significant in them. People who are characterized by a lot of anger and violence. And as you go up on the level of consciousness, you're more awakened. It begins with integrity, and the higher you go up, there's more love. And the higher you go up the ladder, the awakened you are. And that also through muscle testing, he calibrated that there are about 78% of the human population under the 200 level of consciousness. And that the higher you go up, the less people there are. But the thing that's really struck me is that people who are under the 200 level of consciousness, because I suppose of their anger, their violence, that they can self-destruct. But thanks to the people who are higher on the level of consciousness, they help to balance out with these people, on the bottom level of consciousness. In other words, one person who's high on the level of consciousness can help to balance with hundreds, millions of people on the lower level of consciousness, so that there's balance and peace. And so, our practice here, the peace that we cultivate, the love that we cultivate, the mindfulness energy that we cultivate here, is helping to balance with so many people who are under the level of consciousness. And this is to say that, people don't have to know that we exist to help, balance this energy in the humanity. Maybe we may be practicing in a cave in the Himalayas, and nobody knows that we exist. But their presence, our presence there, is contributing enormously to the well-being, to this balance, to this awakening of humanity. And so this simple sutra and these simple practices are really to help us to wake up. And not just so that we can transform our suffering, but it helps us to be free. And that our freedom, that our awakening is helping the awakening of the whole humanity, so that we all can wake up together. So thank you for really coming here. And we are as we are, but your presence here it's really strengthening that collective awakening so that our presence can benefit many people around us. And our presence can help to change the world. So thank you.